are these people?
Fuck Israel segment. So buckle up, because there's going to be, this is heavy stuff. Again, we'll start with a somewhat good news story. I'm going to share this video from Omar Shakir and Dawn. Let's go here. Okay, in December, Dawn is founded by Jamal Khashoggi originally to reform U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East and hold accused accountable. Okay, published the identities of the 50 executives and board members who run AIPAC, which AIPAC, by the way, hides. But AIPAC isn't just 50 people. And so this time we went deeper, thousands of people deeper, to understand how AIPAC operates. And they created a website, AIPACwhoweare.org. So let's find out exactly whoweare.org. Hang on, let's again blow this up, start it over. We're mapping out the organization's massive footprint and network of influence. Mapping out professional connections of over 3,000 current, former AIPAC staffers. Their own LinkedIn profiles, their own professional disclosures. Here's what we found. AIPAC says it's an American organization. It says it takes no money from foreign countries, but its own staff is from the Israeli government. All over Israel. Military intelligence. Professional connections to every major pro-Israel advocacy group. Major institutions. Known organizations. Think tanks. Media outlets. A network of networks. And it's deeply connected to U.S. governmental bodies and political party apparatuses, but it's not just connections. It's a revolving door. Dozens of current and former AIPAC staff have personally worked inside the U.S. government and inside the Israeli government. AIPAC's executive vice president for policy and government affairs was a deputy what? Deputy assistant secretary at the State Department. A former AIPAC staffer currently advises the Israeli prime minister. Another works in the White House. AIPAC shapes policy in the Middle East. And you should know how it works. Okay? So, this organization, like I said, did this phenomenal job of mapping this out. And they lay this out more clearly here with graphs and pictures. AIPAC shaped U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, but how does AIPAC wield such influence? Well, Dawn analyzed available data and mapped connections between AIPAC, the Israeli and U.S. governments, and the broader pro-Israel ecosystem. The project is based on more than, like I said, 3,000 LinkedIn connections and publicly available records. Here's what we found. So the graphic they were showing is this one. Okay, and again, I'll link to all this in the show notes afterwards. All right, and what you see is the ADL, the American Jewish Council, the Jewish National Fund USA, B'nai B'rith Youth Organization, and where they're all connected and how they're all connected, from AIPAC to the Israeli government, through right-wing pro-Israel media, U.S. government and Congress, the think tanks, political parties, bodies, and then all the different organizations overseas in Israel that are influencing this and that orchestrate a lot of what happens over here. Pretty rough. Okay. Dawn's new research project maps what it calls an AIPAC network of networks. The project visualizes institutional and professional ties between AIPAC, Israeli, and U.S. governmental bodies, and an ecosystem of pro-Israel advocacy organizations, think tanks, media outlets, and policy institutions. The graphic shows how extensive these connections are. 55 members of the Republican Party, all right? The Republican Jewish Council, I think that is. The Republican National Committee, the GOP state parties. So all these people have current and former AIPAC staffers with LinkedIn connections to some of these organizations. Dawn's analysis also shows that 66 former AIPAC staffers who currently work in the U.S. government, from Congress to the White House to various branches of the military. Nearly 24 AIPAC staffers previously worked in U.S. government bodies. So again, 50 in the House of Representatives alone, 5 staff in congressional offices, 4 at the State Department, 4 at the Commerce Department. So people everywhere. The personal and professional relationships that result from this type of revolving door form the backbone of political influence in Washington, which is indicated in the hundreds of professional connections between AIPAC staffers and U.S. and federal state employees. Now, this is all of the Israeli government connections and how they link. There's the Consulate General of Israel in New York. You've got 3 AIPAC staffers there. You've got another 28 in the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and 4 in the office of the Israeli Prime Minister alone. The data that Dawn analyzed reveals many connections to Israeli government institutions. 7 former AIPAC staffers currently work for Israeli government institutions, and 6 current AIPAC staffers previously worked for Israel, according to the analysis. That's that revolving door they're talking about. This is on top of 153 LinkedIn connections, which show ongoing relationships between individuals working for AIPAC and the Israeli government, respectively. Huh. What a coinkydink. AEI, FDD, 45 people, current and former, at, I don't know which one that is, FDD. I'm sure the first one would give me the legend and tell me. Who's FDD? Where's FDD? It's down here somewhere. So these are the think tanks. And again, how they are interwoven in the American Jewish Committee and Hillel and the ADL. And they've got people that work in both organizations, or have worked for both organizations, that have connections. And that's what this is all about. AIPAC shapes U.S. policy in the Middle East, but also operates entirely in the shadows. The public deserves greater transparency about how one of Washington's most powerful lobbying organizations operates, especially given its tax-exempt status and extensive sphere of influence, as they've just shown. So again, 20 former AIPAC staffers at the Jerusalem Post, 7 at I-24 News. Okay, you've got 1 at Sinclair and 1 at PragerU. I think that's Alexis, maybe. It's AIPAC floods American elections with millions of dollars. More and more candidates are challenging its long-standing stranglehold on U.S. elections and policy, said Hala Jaber, advocacy director at Dawn. It's critical that Americans continue to press for answers on who actually runs AIPAC and who AIPAC actually runs. In December of this past year, they launched the Faces of AIPAC. They said, like it said in the video, the project exposing 50 AIPAC board members and executive staff, people AIPAC has not publicly identified. But AIPAC is more than 50 people. This project sheds the light on how it actually works. So, if I go back here and I go back to this page, this tab, this is the website that tracks all of these connections. And you can click on any one of them and get a full bio and the accountability for exactly why they're on this list. I can't think of a better kind of organization to support. This is, again, dawnmena, DAWNMENA.org/AIPAC. I will drop that in the chat now for those who want to check that out. But I got a lot more. This is just the tip of the iceberg tonight. Next. You know, they've been saying, the Zionists say forever that Palestine was never an official place. Well, we've seen coins and money from Palestine. We've seen manhole covers from Palestine. How about a birth certificate? Okay. The next time they say there was never a place called Palestine, part 2. Peter Nightingale kindly shared this remarkable document, and I used Adobe and ChatGPT to restore it to its full glory and magnificence. So this is AI enhanced. Even ChatGPT was impressed, saying, quote, "The document itself is extraordinary. British Mandate Palestine trilingual naturalization paperwork with intact signatures, stamps, multilingual typography, and period portrait photography. Really remarkable artifact." Is it real? I would assume that Einat Temkin is not telling a lie. Former research assistant at USC Annenberg for School of Journalism, Communication. I don't know. I saw this, I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive. 1925. Before Israel was created, whatever you want to call it, was yeah, I mean created, that's the only word to describe it. Before Palestine was stolen from the Palestinian people that were living there and the Nakba, and they were exterminated, and the land was slowly overtaken by the Zionists. Now, on top of it, sometimes one old document is enough to shake an entire narrative. Here again is a 1932 passport issued by the U.S. Consulate in Jerusalem bearing the name Palestine. I thought it wasn't a place. Before Israel, before every attempted erasure, history does not always need shouting. Sometimes one stamp is enough. How is this colorized? I have no idea.
Look at that. How beautiful, mashallah. May God rest her soul. So look, Virginia right there. July 5th, 1932. This passport was issued at the American Consulate General, Jerusalem, Palestine. The capital, Jerusalem. The country name is Palestine. See that? Yes, sir. Y'all can argue with your mama, but it was always Palestine. It will always be Palestine. Hey, looking at it.
So, for anyone that has questions about whether it was actually a place named Palestine, and there were actually people that lived in a place named Palestine, don't gaslight and say it didn't, that they didn't, and that didn't exist. It did, and it still does. And they've been stealing and sitting on that land, and at some point, it will hopefully end up back with the people that they stole it from. Israel should not exist as a country, especially after what they're doing right now. Like this one, and this is not, again, this is because of Israel, but this is happening in the UK. This is insane. Now, Village Crazy Lady Mel, I don't always agree with a lot of what she says. This one, she happens to be spot on. And when it comes to defending the Palestinian people against the Zionists, she's spot on. If you're a Jewish doctor in the UK, not only are you allowed to volunteer for the IDF, you're allowed to relish in your murder of Palestinian babies with zero consequences. But if you're a Palestinian doctor who points out the Jewish supremacy controlling the UK, you'll have your license pulled faster than you can blink. And she's talking about Dr. Rahme Adwan, who we've talked about before. She's had her license suspended 4 times already, and she's fought to have it reinstated. All right. This happened in January. When asked how many babies have you sniped, this clown, this murderer, replied, not enough. Not enough, but I'm sure they can add 2 more. And what's worse is the picture of the children that he was commenting on. Wow, it's just horrific. So, Zionist general practitioner who called for Palestinian babies to be shot retains his medical license. Now, what they've done is they pulled him off the hospital that he was at, and they've allowed him to practice privately still. But he still has a license to practice medicine in the UK right now. Dr. Eastland Stavely. What a monster. Now, from Dr. Finley's private practice, whatever that is. Okay, but now he's allowed to practice privately and still allowed to advise people on health somehow. Wow. So that's in the UK. Now we get into what's happening in Lebanon. This is actually what the U.S. It's U.S. bombs and U.S. backing using UK bases and U.S. weaponry and Israeli soldiers that are carrying these out. In most cases, we don't even know if American soldiers are too, but definitely Israeli soldiers. So I'm going to go to Jason Ditz over at Antiwar.com. Antiwar is an Indie Media Award honoree, one of the top independent outlets out there. Go to indiemediaawards.substack.com, see a whole list that we published starting in 2022, 23, and 24. There's like 100 different outlets and journalists and live streamers. But anyway, Israeli soldiers detail their own ongoing looting in southern Lebanon. These war criminals can't help but document their war crimes. They're so proud of themselves and they're bragging about it because there so far has been no repercussions. Commanders see little point to keeping Israeli troops inside Lebanon, but they're doing it anyway because of the Greater Israel Project. And they're destroying entire towns, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. With the ceasefire, quote unquote, in Lebanon, that Israel continues to violate, having been extended another 45 days last week, Israeli commanders are finding themselves increasingly unclear about why exactly they're still in Lebanon, whether the ceasefire is meant to be complied with or designed to fail, and indeed what purpose the further presence is meant to serve. It's meant to serve as justification so they can exterminate everybody and steal the land. I'm going to give you the long and the short of it. The commanders see Israel as in something of a tangle where the U.S. is opposing them advancing any further, but their policy is to remain in southern Lebanon, destroying villages and clashing with Hezbollah fighters. This is a lot like what we did in Vietnam, just trashing the place, murdering the civilians. This adds to the controversy surrounding an ongoing series of reports from Haaretz, in which Israeli soldiers report that the primary thing they're actually doing inside Lebanon is looting and destroying Lebanese villages. Why are they doing that? Because they want to level the ground and build whatever they want to build on top of it. And in order to do that, you need level ground. The soldiers said that they viewed the looting as unofficial, but the primary mission of the ongoing occupation of southern Lebanon. Okay, Haaretz has repeatedly reported on the ongoing problem of troops bringing loot back across the border, saying Israeli military leadership is not holding looters to account. What a surprise. And citing troops who say they assumed it was acceptable behavior. Because they've never been punished for it before, why would they assume that they would be now? One reservist described the systematic taking of goods out of Lebanese villages and bringing them back to the Israeli outpost, so they'd be waiting for the soldiers when they went home. Haaretz ran a similar report last month describing the widespread looting of Lebanese territory. So not only are they murderers, not only are they rapists, they're also thieves. Since Israel invaded southern Lebanon in early March, the Lebanese Health Ministry has reported some 3,089 people who've been killed in the war. I mean, it's not really a war, but a massacre, and another 9,400 wounded. This includes hundreds of both women and children, probably thousands. Okay, but that Jason's reporting hundreds. But I'm not done with Lebanon because they're just taking Lebanon and nobody's paying attention. But few are. Hala Jaber, of course, is. All right. Israel killed 9 paramedics in roughly 72 hours. Let that sink in. These are some of their faces. According to Lebanon's latest health sector figures, now updated after the killing of additional paramedics in the last 48 hours, this is the same blueprint that we saw in Gaza. They're going after the healthcare workers. They're going after the infrastructure. They're going after the civilization and the mechanism that runs civilization. 125 healthcare workers killed and another 273 wounded that can't now serve and patch up the sick and injured. 149 attacks on the healthcare sector, 142 ambulances targeted, every one being a war crime. 32 medical centers destroyed, and that's just in Lebanon. In 48 hours. Oh, that's updated after 48 hours. 16 hospitals forced out of service. 221 ambulance crews attacked. Imagine we were reporting that Russia did that in Ukraine. Imagine what the corporate press, the outrage that happened to anywhere else in the world, but in a country that Israel has decided they want to destroy. Lebanon's emergency sector is not collapsing accidentally. It is being systematically dismantled. That sounds just like Gaza. Israel is committing war crimes against Lebanon's medical services, like they did in Gaza, because they are war criminals. Disgraceful. Ambulance drivers, hospital workers, paramedics. Why? Because God forbid they would actually make some sick people healthy. Israel can't have that. So they got to kill them. Fuck Israel. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing this right. I looked it up. AI, of course, doesn't necessarily know. I just called it Tyre. This is Tyre in South Lebanon today. Israel is leveling entire civilian neighborhoods in one of the most intense bombardments yet. One of humanity's oldest cities is being systematically wiped out. And, of course, not a peep from the complicit international community. Look at this.
الله يكسر ايديك ان شاء الله.
هذا يطلع
They claim it's happening. They claim they're These are the terrorists that are blowing up buildings indiscriminately in the oldest city, one of the oldest cities in the world. There are not terrorists in those buildings. The terrorists are sitting in Tel Aviv. Worse, here's another video, and this comes from RealTheForce, replying to Congressman former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Not a fan of hers whatsoever. What possibly is left to bomb children and people in tents? They're giving her really low-hanging fruit to make it easy for her to sound like she gives a shit. Check this out. This is another one of these horrific videos. There's no green left. There's few buildings left. That was Rafa a year ago. Now it's even worse. That was last September. Now it's even worse. This only charts basically September, October, December 2023. From June to December. Wow. January to September 2024. October to 2023 to April 2020. Look at all that green right here. Right here. All those green fields destroyed. You see all the bulldozer tracks. They tore those up. They dug them up. They burned them. And that wasn't the Palestinians burning their own fields. All right, again, this is from October of 2023 through May of 2025. You see no structures left standing where there were, and I'm guaranteeing you that all that green is going to be gone too. Yep. All that green in just 8 months. Two years. And now again, you're talking about 9 months later than that. Oof. March to July, just a 5-month period, right? 4-month period. Completely unrecognizable. Again, all that green here and here and here. Why? So they could steal the oil. I'm not going to read this one. I'm going to link this one, but this is a depressing as hell story from the Electronic Intifada, another Indie Media Award honoree. Okay, Malak, Hijazi, endless displacement, endless Nakba. Obviously, this is going to be a horrifying story. Reef and Colin did an extensive coverage about Nakba Day last week on INN News, so go check that out. This is an interview with an 84-year-old woman who's older than the state of Israel themselves. So I'm going to encourage everyone to read that one. That one's just really, really tough to take. Okay. I read one from Middle East Monitor earlier. Here's another article they brought. Government Media Office warns of a sharp decline in aid entering Gaza. Go figure. When you've got a line of trucks waiting in Israel blockading them. Okay, this was just in February. They still had a substantial line of trucks with aid ready to enter, but there's a limit on how many trucks can come in a day, and then beyond that, Israel harasses all the trucks that do try to come in. The government media office in Gaza warned it on Tuesday of what it described as a dangerous decline in humanitarian aid entering the Strip due to the siege and restrictions imposed by Israel. They know that well, very well. We don't, but Israel knows that well because they're the ones that are imposing it. Office Director Ismail al-Twabada said that since the ceasefire agreement came into force, bullshit ceasefire nonsense, okay, that only 48,636 total aid trucks had entered Gaza out of the total of 131,400. That represents what he described as a compliance rate of 37%. According to al-Fawada, more than 63% of Gaza's basic humanitarian needs have therefore not been met. And Israel would say, right, that's our plan. It's horrible. He added that between the beginning of May and the 18th of May this year, only 2,719 trucks entered the territory out of 10,800 scheduled. Again, represented a compliance rate of 25%. So it's not getting better, it's getting worse. Al-Fawada accused Israel of deliberately using food, medicine, and humanitarian aid as tools of political pressure, describing the restrictions as violations of international humanitarian law with severe consequences for civilians, as Israel has been intending the entire time, sadly. He called on the international community, mediators and guarantors of the ceasefire agreement, allegedly, to pressure Israel to fully implement all provisions of the deal, including opening crossings regularly and ensuring the unrestricted flow of humanitarian aid. How are they going to do that? What are they going to do now that's going to stop Israel after all of this time? They've already got all the money they need. They've already got all the weaponry that they need. So they already have the forces that they need. The statement also referred to the ceasefire framework, again, nonsense, announced by Donald Trump on 29 September of 2025, which included provisions for a ceasefire, partial Israeli withdrawal, prisoner exchanges, and the entry of 600 aid trucks a day. We ain't seeing 600 aid trucks a day, not when you've seen 2,400 between the 1st and the 18th. The office stated that while Hamas had fulfilled its obligations during the first phase by returning all the hostages, Israel had continued military operations and expanded its presence in Gaza and moved the goalposts like they usually do. Now they want a complete disarmament. According to the statement, the second phase of the agreement was intended to include a broader Israeli withdrawal and reconstruction efforts in exchange for the disarmament of Palestinian factions, an issue that remains disputed between the parties. That's a nice way of saying it. Middle East Monitor tells you the facts, but does a little whitewashing while they're doing it. They try to sugarcoat it. Now, this woman does not sugarcoat, and I've become even more and more of a fan of hers, Sana Saeed. I also became a paid subscriber of hers, sanasaeed.substack.com, spelled exactly like her name. Go follow her, for sure. The biggest gaslight of the past year has been pretending there are ceasefires in Gaza or Lebanon, while Israeli slaughter and displacement of entire populations continue, as I just showed you. All right. So what am I talking about here? This is a New York Times headline pointing out that Israeli strikes are pummeling Lebanon, killing medics amid fragile truce. How can it be a truce if they're pummeling Lebanon? What? damaged a main hospital in Tyre as funerals for paramedics killed a day earlier were held, and they were double tapping the paramedics, meaning they were killing people with a bomb, waiting for the paramedics to come to help them, and then dropping another bomb on the paramedics. Another war crime, by the way. Worse, we've got this. In Gaza, since the start of the ceasefire, quote unquote, on October 11th, this is what Israel's done. Killed 904 Palestinians and injured another 2,713. Yesterday, they bombed Al-Nusrat refugee camp in Gaza with one strike, 5 homes completely destroyed. This is a photo of the area. Fuck Israel. People in tents, barely surviving, where no aid trucks are getting in, not nearly enough. No medical supplies are making it in. They destroyed all the hospitals. They destroyed all the roads. They celebrated one new cafe and one library that got rebuilt partially. And now they have to bomb the refugee camps. But worse, they started digging up. They found a mass grave behind the Al-Shifa hospital, where we remember that the IDF had actually made the patients line up and had held them all kind of in handcuffs or zip tied and blindfolded. They found these mass graves. They found children and babies with their hands bound with zip ties behind their back. This photo is from 2 mass graves discovered at Nasser Hospital, southern Gaza, in April. That was May 23rd. During the genocide, the Euromed Human Rights Watch documented over 130 mass graves of the victims of Israeli genocide. And these are literally the size of children's wrist zip ties, but babies, child's wrist. Fuck Israel. Again, babies bound behind their back, murdered, buried. And then we've got Mondo Weiss, another Indie Media Award honoree. Okay, there, Israel moves to annex Palestinian historical sites in the West Bank. Again, this is another pretty long article. We've talked about some of the historical sites and these ancient, ancient site, World Heritage sites that either they've destroyed or started to take over. The Israeli Knesset is considering a bill that would place Palestinian historical sites in the West Bank under direct Israeli civil law, stripping them of their protected status under international law. Experts say it's annexation in all but name. So here's what's going on. Again, the bill is known as the Antiquities Law. It was originally introduced in 2023. Its final draft was approved by the Israeli cabinet in February as part of a broader set of annexation measures. Again, we talked about this when we talked about one of the other cities that they were looking to annex and appropriate and take over. Introduced by Likud Knesset member Amit Halevi, it passed its first Knesset reading on Wednesday by 23-14. It's now due to go up for its second and third readings in the Israeli parliamentary body before being passed into law. If it does, the bill would transfer authority over the West Bank antiquities from the Israeli Army's Antiquities Officer to a new agency under the direct authority under the Ministry of Heritage. The Palestinians get no say over any of this. This would move the control of the occupied Palestinian antiquities from the Army's civil administration to a civilian agency in the Israeli government, a clear act of legal annexation in contravention of international law. So I'm going to stop there. I'll let you guys finish that one. It's gross. And fuck Israel for that. I got more. But this one's actually somewhat good news. I mean, documenting a genocide, if you can call documenting a genocide good news, this is an interactive map at a website called genocide.live for as long as it stays up. Okay? Minor new feature on the genocide.live map created by Zionism Observer. Geolocated videos can now be played without leaving the map. So what happens is when you click on the website and you click on one of these, it pops up a box where you can watch the video of what happened exactly there, documented, dated, and with receipts. Wow. Buildings, murders, everything. Okay, events from October 19, 2023 through May 5th of this year. Uploads from January 1st through May 13th. Today they announced that not only do they have video, they also now are linking this to photographs. So if they have photographs of people that were murdered and that the IDF committed war crimes against, they'll be listed here. So let's watch this video real quick from receipts_LOL. So check this out. Clicking on that opens up a thing. Ambulance directly shot on the way to a rescue mission. There's the date. There's the coordinates. Click to zoom on the location. Impressive as hell what these people are doing. Appreciate that greatly. If you find our archives valuable, please consider supporting their fundraiser to improve the backup infrastructure. They have a chuffed fundraiser where they're looking to raise $60,000. I'm so sad that this project of horror and atrocities has been necessary, but it's a brilliant initiative. Safe storage of evidence is paramount. Justice must come to the Palestinians. That's Michelle. She's a well-known Assange supporter, friend of the network. So we've got the mapping, and then finally we've got just a reminder from Ayuba Ahmed. On October 7th, Israel killed its own people and covered it up to justify genocide. No sugarcoating here. We tell it like it is. That's what happened. But yeah, I'm really happy about that interactive map. I think that's really important. And so for all of that, we say, fuck Israel. All right. That took less time than I thought it would. That's not bad. I do have quite a bit of stuff to still get through here. But, man, they are just tearing through the entire world and without any repercussions whatsoever. And it's mind-bending and so frustrating for people that actually have a heart and see what they're doing. I mean, kudos to everybody that's fighting to do something to stop this. The database project does seem amazing. Yeah, no, that's right, Billy. All right. Yeah, so support independent media. I did not bring any corporate media from there because corporate media doesn't want to talk about any of this stuff. We need independent media more than ever. We need people who know how to crawl independent media and collate this stuff and find the stuff and build websites like IndieNewsNow.com. The ways to do that here are Cash App, $ Indie News Network, at ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. Over at paypal.me/Indie News Network. I saw Sean did that. Thank you so much. Over at patreon.com/Indie News Network. You can subscribe monthly. We're over on Substack. We're live right there now at IndieMediaToday.com. Hello to everybody watching over there. And then also I publish over at INN Newsletter. That's part of the network that we are members of, that I'm a founding member of. And there are also 5 other shows and podcasts that are hosted at INN Newsletter. So there's a great reason to subscribe there too. And everybody on that board already has supported financially, and really appreciate everyone doing that. I want to wish happy birthday, by the way, to Descent in Bloom, who had a birthday this week. I love you all. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. And I will see you next Tuesday, fam. Where do we go? Hey. All right. Love you all. Night, everyone.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want?